Okay, anyways, how are you? How have you been? How was your week?
Um, I it's going.
That
It's
doesn't
going.
sound great.
I'm not depressed as fuck anymore, but it's going.
Hmm. Well, the new Hocus Pocus movie is out tonight.
I don't know.
Freaking excited. After we're done here, I'm immediately I'm in my comfy clothes. I'm gonna make some popcorn and maybe an alcoholic drink, and I'm gonna get settled in.
Hey Siri, please turn on Do Not Disturb.
Okay, I turned on Do Not Disturb.
He's a man?
I don't like that Siri bitch.
Why is he a man?
Because I don't like the
One
bitch.
We have three Alexas in our house, and one of them is a man. The one in the kitchen is a man. And every time he talks to me, I'm like, shut up.
If
Not
I
to
can't
be.
figure out how to do something on the computer or on the phone, I ask Siri to do it.
That's fair enough. After last week, talking about the betrayal and the burning and or no, the secret and the burning, and what a joy those were.
And this week we get to talk about my first experience with a horror slasher film.
Yeah. How did you, so like just a very baseline, how did you feel about them? Like if I were just some rando, just to be like not for a podcast, just be like, how did you feel about your first horror movie experience? Like what would you say?
Overall, a good experience. It wasn't too terrifying, which is good. I'm always afraid of being afraid.
Kai's having a snack, by the way.
This is my dinner. Don't don't tell Tony.
Okay, I won't.
I liked him. Okay, yeah, mm, good stuff.
Oh, we should back up a little bit. We're talking about the Fear Street movies that we thought the Betrayal series was based on. The Fear Street movies that are on Netflix. The Fear Street Trilogy is a Netflix original horror movie trilogy directed by Leigh Janiak, inspired by the book series by R.L. Stine, better known as the author of the Goosebumps series.
I think that
Uh,
might be Lee, but I'm not sure.
it is Lee. I'm sorry. It's Leigh Janiak. Sorry, Lee. Um, I know you listen to the podcast.
Watch,
I
she
will.
doesn't. She's just like, excuse me.
I want to jump ahead a little bit and say something that because the whole point of contention for us was like we wanted to read the books that the movies were based on, and like we didn't get that. um and I found an article on Pop Sugar where Lee Janiak says like she mostly just wanted to inspire the feeling of the books, and Pop Sugar listed the books that they are inspired by. um and we got Fear Street Cheerleaders, The First Evil, The Surprise Party, The Wrong Number, Trapped, Lights Out, Fear Park, The First Scream, and then Fear Street Saga, The Betrayal, which is one of the three books we read last episode.
I honestly don't think it's based off of any of them, but I haven't read any of them. But
I mean, I see um inspiration from the betrayal in the last movie. I don't see it being based on it, but I see inspiration, and that's about as far as that goes. And the quote from Lee Janiak says, they're not really based concretely in the books. Mostly, I think I would endeavor to stay true to the spirit of the books, which is kind of subversive and edgy for teenage readers. So I can appreciate where she's coming from.
quick question that's very off topic.
Yeah.
Do you ever think like animals want to speak?
Um, if they can comprehend what speaking is, then yes, I think they probably want to speak quite a lot.
Because Ziggy's just staring at me like this. With his squinty little eyes because he wants a snack.
I mean, they want to communicate with us, I think. I think they understand that there's a communication barrier. So, yes, I think is my answer to your question.
Because sometimes, honestly, it's just so weird that, like, I'm just sitting here with him for hours and he just don't say nothing. Except for the occasional. "Ugh."
What if he just started talking to you one day, like
I
full
would
stop
literally
English?
shit my pants, my butthole would fall out.
Just imagine he was like, you came home and you were just tired. It's been a long day. And he's like, hey, Kaya, how was your day at work? Like in a full grown man's voice.
Do you ever wonder what your pet's voice would sound like?
I already know what they would sound like. We voice our pets. We give them voices, like voice actors. We change them a lot though.
I think Ziggy would sound like a 5-year-old.
I don't know. Like it's so weird that like now that I'm like, oh, what do my cats sound like? I can't like give you an example of what we say when we're like voicing them, but we give them voices when they're being little dumbasses. And if you don't do that with your pets, then like, do you really love them? I don't think you do.
I just talk to him like he's a real person.
I feel like if I had a kid, that's what I do. Like, you know how people talk in baby voices to their kids? I don't think I do that.
Hmm.
I'm like the opposite.
My friend, Heather, who listens. Hey, Heather, brought her baby over one day. And I was just sitting there talking to her baby, like, girl, this is a safe space. You don't need to feel worried here. Ain't no crying here. You fine.
Well, did the baby keep crying?
Yeah.
Well, you tried your best. That's the one with the cute baby that's on your fridge, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we got so off topic. But that is just what you should expect from us, I think. Because I'm keeping this in.
Oh, good.
So, some facts about the Fear Street trilogy. These films were actually shot back to back. They shot I think they shot the last one first and then the second one, and then they did the first, yeah, so they shot them backwards. I'm pretty sure is what they did. Sorry. They intended to release them in theaters one after the other with a month between each of them. But COVID happened, so instead they released one after the other over 3 weeks in 2021 on Netflix once they got the rights to it.
Nice.
Yeah, it was an awesome like viewing experience. I loved it.
Let's get started.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we'll start with the first movie, obviously, Fear Street Part 1, 1994.
1994.
Yeah.
It opens up with a guy murdering people in a mall.
Yeah,
A dumpy
the
looking mall.
yeah, it looks very decrepit. And also the girl, in the beginning, we I thought she worked in like a DVD rental place. Apparently she worked in a bookstore, which did not register. And in the opening scene, you can see the Fear Street novels, like it's panning across like the Fear Street novels in the opening scene.
Well, no, that is clever.
Yeah, very cute. And I think when like that lady in the opening scene, she's renting that book and or she's buying that book and she's like, "Oh, did you like it?" And she's like, "It wasn't really that good." And I'm wondering which book that was.
Probably the betrayal series.
But yeah, the guy who's the murderer is Ryan Torres, and he is actually friends with the girl Heather. They both work at the mall, and um Heather is gonna get a ride home from Ryan as they're closing up shop at the mall at their respective shops. But then like Ryan thinks he hears her call his name as she walks away, and she's like, I didn't say anything, weirdo. Um and then they depart ways, and then all of a sudden there's this crazy guy in a skull mask, and then he's slaughtering people in the mall, and then he gets to Heather. It turns out to be Ryan.
Yeah, there's a chase scene and she pulls off the mask and she's like, Ryan. And then a
Yeah.
cop shoots him in the back of the head and they both die in each other's arms,
Yeah.
basically.
Apparently that scene was super inspired by Scream. Okay, what happens next? After we find out it's Ryan.
Oh, that girl, what was her name? Dina?
Yeah. We see Dina in her bedroom, and she's writing a letter to her ex, Sam. And she's writing a very mad, edgy letter, being like, I hate you, and I wish I never met you, and blah, and whatever. And then you meet her brother Josh in the basement, and he's chatting on AOL. And there's so much 90s music going on. It's like way too many songs within like a 5 minute period. Like, we get it. Also, some of the songs were released after 94, which is just something that
It's okay.
they're still bops. Like, it's a good soundtrack, don't get me wrong. So yeah, we meet Dina and Josh. They live in the town of Shadyside. They go to school, and you kind of get the vibe that, I don't know, what would you say? It's like, I don't know, rowdy, and this is the same school that Heather, the girl who just got murdered at the mall, went to, and you can see a bunch of rest in peace notes on her locker.
It reminds me of the high school from A Cinderella Story with Hilary Duff. Just
Mm,
really chaotic.
yeah, it is chaotic. At some point, someone drags like a witch in a noose. I think it's like some kind of mannequin in a noose down the hallway. Like they're galloping down the hallway with someone in a noose. And it's like a
That's
little
fucked.
much. I think they're wearing a jersey, like the mannequin is wearing a jersey of the other school. I might be misremembering. The other school is in Sunnyvale, and that's the whole premise of this um story is Sunnyvale versus Shadyside. At the school, we meet Kate and Simon, who are Dina's friends. They deal drugs, and Simon's just kind of weird. I don't know how else to describe him.
He's like your stereotypical stoner.
Yeah, I guess he is a stoner character. Yeah, and Kate is a cheerleader, and they're kind of cracking jokes about Heather, the girl that got murdered, and Dina's like, guys, like, stop, it's not funny. And they're like, what's your problem? It's funny. And she's like, it's not funny, like someone's dead. So then there's a candlelight vigil held for Heather later that night.
In Sunnyvale
And in Sunnyvale, right.
at a football game.
Yes. And so all of the Sunnyvalers are there and all of the Shadysiders are there. And you can kind of see as the bus is traveling through the town from Shadyside to Sunnyvale, like the wealth disparity, like the houses get fancier and fancier. And when you get to the football stadium, you can see in the background, after the sheriff introduces himself, his name is Sheriff Good. There's a bunch of signs in the back that say like Good Realty and um other like brands and things that have the name Good on them.
It's the big
And
name in town.
yeah, then the mayor's name is also Good. So
Think about like your tiny ass hometown and how like there's one last name that's everywhere. It's just like that.
yeah. Um so yeah, they have that candlelight vigil. As that's happening, Dina at some point sneaks off and she meets up with Sam, her ex, and she gives her a shoebox of like all her stuff. and they have this fight about how Sam moved away and went to Sunnyvale. She moved away from Shady Side, and um Dina's like, you're running away from who you really are, and she's mad because Sam has a boyfriend now and she feels like she's pretending to be something she's not.
Maybe
Um
she's just bi.
you're right. Yeah, that's what I thought of too. However, like it was hard for me to root for that because Peter, her boyfriend at Sunnyvale, was such a dick.
He got what was coming to him.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So like they have their little fight and then they go their separate ways. They get back to the football field at the vigil and then um some like words were thrown from the Sunnyvale side and then someone on the Shady side was like, "What did you say?" And then a whole fight breaks out. The cops show up and everyone's kind of stonewalling the police and being like, "Oh, like nothing really happened. Like we don't know who threw the first punch. Like who knows?" So they don't really get anywhere with that investigation.
And then they kind of take the bus home.
Yeah. They take the bus home.
Dina's in the back, depressed.
Yeah.
And then she sees her girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, Sam, in the car with her boyfriend, Peter, and some other dudes. And they're chasing the bus, which, why?
Yeah.
And then they take this sport cooler, like, the thing that the Gatorade is in, and they open up the emergency exit on the back of the bus, and they throw it at the car, and the car spirals out of control into a ditch.
Dina's like, "Stop the bus." And it's like, what? I don't know, man. Like, why did the bus driver not stop when, first of all, the Sunnyvalers were throwing the glass bottles? And then, second of all, when they opened the back door? Like, why was the bus driver just like letting all this happen? I don't know. But, anyways, the car that Sam was in crashes because of the cooler, and Sam gets hurt, and she bleeds on this red moss on the ground. And she sees this weird vision and the screaming lady, and she's not really sure what it is. And when Dina and the others come up to her, she's like, "Did you see that?" And they kind of they don't answer her. They just are like, "Oh my God, like you're bloody as hell." And she ends up going to the hospital. And then later that
Fast
night,
forward. Oh, maybe it is later that night. Some creep ass in a skull mask is creeping on Dina's house and the place where Kate babysits. And I think it's Sam's boyfriend Peter, the douche canoe.
and then they go to the hospital to see Sam. And then Dina and Sam have a huge fight about how Sam says that Dina's just gonna wake up in 20 years and be just like her dad, who's a drunk and works two jobs and doesn't do anything with his life, and like ouch. And they're having this screaming match, and all of a sudden there's like a squelching sound, and they turn, and like Peter has a knife through his stomach, so he's dead.
And it's this Scully dude. And then they chase Sam and Dina through the hospital.
And then they go to the police because at some point, the Scully dude's mask comes off and they see that it's Ryan Torres. But like they know that Ryan Torres is dead because the cops shot him in the beginning. So like what the hell? So they go to the police and they're like, "Hey, I saw Ryan Torres at the hospital and he was killing everybody." And they're talking to Sheriff Good and he's like, what does he say? He's like, "Oh, did they look more Walking Dead or did he look more Evil Dead?" So he was just not taking them seriously.
They steal an ambulance at some point.
That's right. They stole the ambulance to get to the sheriff, didn't they?
I think they did.
Didn't why did no one at the police station notice they were in an ambulance?
It's not like his job's on the line or anything.
So after they try to get help from the sheriff, there's this girl who's singing this nursery rhyme, this song, this like old
It's
timey
a
song.
50s style, like speakeasy type song.
She's kind of sitting all alone, and Simon goes to check on her, and then she attacks him with a straight razor, and she pretty much almost kills him. But Dina had stole a gun from an officer at the um sheriff's department. So she shoots her. They like reconvene at Dina's house and they tell Josh, Dina's little brother, what's going on. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, what did this girl look like? Or he tells him, and he's like, oh my gosh, that's Ruby Lane. And they're like, who's Ruby Lane? And she's like, this is a girl who went crazy and killed everyone at her party and then killed herself. Josh has like this whole board of like red string and conspiracies
Like
about
that
how,
meme.
yeah, like the meme, the Pepe Silva meme from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. His theory is that it's the witch's curse. The whole idea is that there is a witch named Sarah Fear, and she put a curse on Shadyside when she was hung for witchcraft. And it curses specifically Shadysiders. And every few years, a Shadysider like goes ballistic and kills a bunch of people. So it was Ruby Lane, and then now it's Ryan Torres. And so Josh clues everyone in on what this is, and he tells everyone about the previous serial killers before then, all the way back to the very first one. And everyone's like not really taking him seriously at first, but then they decide to go back to where Sam had her crash, because then she says, well, I had a vision, and maybe if we go back there, we can find out what's going on. So they go back and they find a bunch of bones.
They go to this school, the high school.
Something I forgot to put in the outline here is the whole thing about how they want Sam. So we should
Oh
probably
yeah.
about that.
There's a bunch of killers that are on the loose now that were already dead. And they all want to kill Sam because Sam's blood got on the red mossy shit. And so they decide that they're gonna go to the school and they're gonna set up a trap. And they're gonna take Sam's blood and they're gonna put it in the bathroom. And they're gonna lure them so that they can blow them up. And they do. And they think that's the end. But we're only within the first 30 minutes of the movie, so it's not the end. They in the goop, the killer goop, their like hands and bodies start coming up and reforming, and then they start going after Sam again. And then they are looking at these like articles or something like that, and they see that this girl named C. Berman had seen the witch at one time, and she survived a massacre that had a guy with a burlap sack over his head and an axe. But she died first, and then she got resuscitated. And so they're like, oh my God, let's kill Sam. One of them, I think it's Simon, is like, you can take this and it's going to do this. And then you can take this and it's going to do this. And then you can take this and it's going to do this. And you got to take them in the right order or else you're going to die for real. And so they decide to kill her by making her OD. And the thing is that I didn't get was if it takes like 15 minutes for this shit to kick in, damn, them killers are going to be there in like no time. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why it didn't work.
They go to a grocery store that one of them works at, I think. I think it's Simon. And he gives them this goddamn cocktail of drugs. And they start Sam starts taking them. Then the killers start coming in. They decide that because it's not working, that they're going to have to drown Sam in a lobster tank. So Kate and Simon and Josh are distracting the zombie murderers, and they put Sam's blood on their bodies so that they smell like her. Kate ends up going through a bread slicer, and that's
Yeah.
on camera. And Simon is axed by the axe man. And Josh is about to get axed as well. So Sam finally drowns, and the killers just, I don't know, what do? They just
They
poof
kind
or
of just like poof, and like they do this really weird like thing where like as Dina's really trying to drown Sam, and they do this thing where like they replay like the last couple steps the killers took, like they go cut between each three of them, and they like replay in slow-mo like the steps they just took. It was kind of strange, like a strange choice cinematically.
Eventually Sheriff Good takes her statements, and then they think they're safe.
Oh, and they do bring Sam back with, well, they try to bring her back with epinephrine, which is stupid because she drowned.
But she also took all them drugs.
I mean, maybe the epinephrine helped, but she also drowned, so then they do CPR.
And she comes back to life. C. Berman calls Dina's phone number because they had called her and they're like, how'd you do it? While she's on the phone with them, she tells them, you can't beat the witch. She's gonna come after you. And Sam's name is getting written on a piece of stone. And right after that happens, Sam stabs Dina. And Dina ties up this possessed version of Sam with a phone cord. Yep. And it ends right there.
Yeah, I think Dina says to Josh, she's like, Sam's not feeling very well. And then
It's kind of creepy.
yeah, and then it stops. And then I mean, then in real time you had to wait a week to find out what
I
happened.
believe sometime Sheriff Good slipped a note into C. Berman's mailbox or mail slot on her door that said, like, it's happening again or something like that.
He did. Yeah, he did do that. Which kind of hinted that they knew each other somehow. So yeah, that's how 1994 ends. I used to think 1994 was my favorite, but after rewatching them for the however many times I've seen them, I don't think it's my favorite anymore. I think this next one is my favorite.
Yeah, I liked the last two. Part two, 1978, starts with Dina and Josh breaking into C. Berman's house. C. Berman gives them a little bit of information about what happened, mentioned that she was at camp for a week and then her sister was dead. Within the first probably 10 minutes or so, they cut back to 1978 at Camp Nightwing. We are introduced to Ziggy Berman, who is getting bullied, and then a teenager named Nick Good rescues her. The sheriff, future sheriff. We're introduced to Nurse Lane, she's played a part in all three movies.
Mm-hmm.
And she plays the same character in this movie as she does in the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She takes the kids that Kate was babysitting when shit started going down. And Nurse Lane is Ruby Lane's mother. And if you recall, Ruby Lane was the one that tried to kill Simon with the, what did you call it, a straight razor?
Yeah.
and she was the one that was singing like the 50s-ish song. Ziggy goes to Nurse Lane because she needs to get treated for a burn that was given to her while she was being bullied
By Sheila.
by Sheila.
Fucking Sheila.
We're then introduced to Cindy Berman and Tommy. I don't know his last name.
Later. I couldn't
I
remember it.
thought it was, but I couldn't
Yeah.
remember. And they are
Oh,
cleaning that red mossy shit in the outhouses. And then Alice and her boyfriend Arnie are slacking off and not cleaning, and they're asking for drugs. You. I remember this one a lot more than the first one.
it's
Ziggy
better.
says that Shady Siders are doomed to have a sucky time, but Cindy, her sister, says that she'll work hard to have a better life because their life at home isn't like the best. Um, I think their mom works a lot, and I don't think they have a dad.
Yeah, their dad left.
The scene cuts to Nurse Lane attacking Tommy, and Cindy's like, "Hey, what the fuck?" Except she didn't say, "Hey, what the fuck," because at this point she doesn't swear at all. Um, and Nurse Lane is like, "He'll be dead tonight, mark my words," or whatever. And she gives no other explanation. There's something that they're doing at camp that day called a color war, and like the sunny, sunny, sunny side,
Sunnyvale.
Sunnyvale people are red, and this doesn't matter. The shady people are blue. Cindy and Tommy go into Nurse Lane's office because she's gone because the police took her away, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because she attacked Tommy. And they're looking for clues as to why she attacked Tommy. And Alice and Arnie are looking for drugs. Like, what are they going to find in a nurse's office, dude? And they find a journal with some witchy shit in it. They find this bottle, and Alice and Arnie are holding on to it, and somebody's like, it's just Tylenol, because Cindy and Tommy are arguing with them about this bottle of whatever. And they go on an adventure in the woods because in the journal they find a map, and they go to follow the map. And they find this like basement, and it's super spooky, all kinds of weird shit in it. And they find a wall, a brick wall, stone wall, excuse me, with a list of all the Shady Side serial killers. And Tommy's name is right at the bottom. And then, without any notice, Tommy goes into a trance and he kills Arnie. And then he chases Cindy and Alice. But by this time, they're separated and they're in a cave, and the rocks fall down, and Tommy's on the other side, and he has access to all the campers, and it would have been so much better if it was the other way around, you know? Alice and Cindy are just kind of bitching at each other, right? So then it goes over to Ziggy and Nick, and they're bonding over Stephen King and other shit, and they plot to get revenge on Sheila, who was Ziggy's bully. And then they bond some more, and they have this adorable romantic kiss, right? And then we pan to this little nerd ass kid he's the warden for the color ward jail,
Yeah.
and he's a shady cider, and
Well,
he's
first he loses all his prisoners.
yeah, he loses all his prisoners, and then as if his luck could not get any worse, he gets murdered. It's not funny, Kaya. And then he's found, and all the counselors are just like, holy shit, there's a murderer. We need to get back to the mess hall pronto. Stat. Color war over. We're done with this.
So we cut back to Alice and Cindy, and they've been like fighting in the caves, and they've been lost. They don't really know where they're going. They're trying to get out, but then they realize with the witchy journal that the witch's mark, which is like this circular thing with a bunch of like angles, it's actually a map to the cave system that they're in. And so they use that to get around. And towards the center of it, they see this weird fleshy heart thing. It's like pulsating, and there's a bunch of flies around it. And Alice feels compelled to touch it for some godforsaken reason. I don't know why
She
they look at
it's
that thing.
it's a sensory thing. And she was like, little squish.
Maybe, but like, I don't know.
You
I
know the
like squishy
feeling.
things. I like squishy things, but I wouldn't touch that thing. It looks smelly too.
That's because of the flies.
I True. It also looked rotten though. Like it was just it was a whole thing, but it's gross. Um, so she touches it, right? And then her hand is almost like stuck to it, and she has all these visions, and she sees all of the previously killed people by the Shady Side killers. And at some point she sees Cindy all bloodied up, and all of this really freaks her out, and she's kind of running all over the place, and she trips and she
Oh my,
breaks her leg.
that was the worst part of the entire fucking series.
Yeah, because
Like that gave me the heebie-jeebies so bad.
her fibula, is that the right bone? Her
It was,
bone is like sticking out of her leg,
I don't know which bone that is.
but it's sticking out and it looks gnarly. Cindy is a pro though, and um
She wraps her leg up.
yeah, she wraps her leg up. And then they have this nice little bonding moment where they're like, "Oh, I really was a jerk. No, I was a jerk." And it's great. They make up. Um And then Cindy notices they're by the witchy bathroom moss, so that they're close to camp, so they can find the bathrooms and then somehow get out. So above ground, Tommy is going on killing kids and counselors. He kills one of the Shady Side counselors that we get to know a little bit, and he kills a few more kids. All of this is kind of going unseen by the rest of the campers because they're all in the mess hall. And being in the mess hall, there's a couple counselors that go out to find stragglers. And all of a sudden, Ziggy realizes that Sheila is still in the bathroom because her and Nick locked her in the bathroom after pulling a prank on her. So she goes to get her, but while she's trying to tell Sheila what's going on, Sheila beats her ass, and somehow Ziggy accidentally knocks her out. A counselor follows in after her, and he's like, "What's going on?" And she's like, "I can't explain." And then all of a sudden, she hears something coming from the toilet, and it's her sister. So her sister and her counselor send a bucket down to get her. But Tommy comes in and he chops off the counselor's head, and the counselor's body falls down into the toilet hole onto Alice's leg. Ziggy and Nick end up running away from Tommy together after this. And Nick takes one in the leg to help Ziggy run away. Because if you'll remember, the Shady Side killers only really care about killing Shady Siders, because during this whole rampage, Tommy has only killed Shady Siders. He has not killed anyone from Sunnyvale. They have been trying to organize a bus to take them away from camp, and by the time Ziggy gets up there, after all of this happens, the bus has driven off. Like, she sees it driving away, and so the bus is left without Alice, Cindy, Ziggy, and Nick. So all Shady Siders except for Nick. Ziggy fights Tommy. She lures him into the mess hall and she like puts on some really loud music, and it comes off just as she's right behind him. And she puts up a pretty good fight for being so small compared to Tommy, but he does end up choking her. He almost gets her. But
Cindy comes up through a grate in the floor.
yes, Cindy had managed to get up from the cave system into the like kitchen area, and there's a grate in the floor, and she kicked it open, and she stabs Tommy just in time to save Ziggy. And eventually Alice also makes her way up from the caves.
And the thing is, Alice was asking Ziggy if she had it in her to kill Tommy
Mm,
a little while back.
Cindy.
Yep,
That's
that's what I meant.
yeah.
Cindy didn't think she could kill her boyfriend, and neither did Alice.
Yeah. And because Cindy said when Nurse Lane went after Tommy, like she just stood there. So, like when it comes to Tommy, like I don't know. I don't know. Could you do it? I don't know if I could.
I'd probably let him kill me.
It's not fun to think about.
So while Alice and Cindy were in the cave system, they found Seraphir's hand. Now, a little bit of background information. Um, you, you learn that her hand was not buried with her body because of something. I don't know. But they say that her hand was cursed.
They say they say something like her hand was chopped off on Satan's stone, something to do with like perhaps pledging her allegiance to him or something along those lines, I think.
So they find her hand in that mossy shit while she was resting, she being Alice, was resting in the caves. And they plan to bury the hand with her body by the hanging tree. Everybody knows which tree is the hanging tree, and it's a tree right on camp. And it's the tree that Ziggy was by while she was getting bullied at the very beginning of the movie. And the legend says that if they bury the hand, reunite the hand with the body, the curse will stop. Okay. They plan to bring it to the tree. And as this is all going on, Ziggy somehow bleeds on the hand. Somehow. And because of this cursey shit, Tommy comes back to life and he kills Alice, who we were just starting to like.
Yeah.
Cindy and Ziggy go to bury the hand at the hanging tree, and when they're digging, they discover that Seraphir's body is not there. And the only thing that's there is a rock, a large rock that says the witch lives forever. And then both of the sisters get killed and they die right next to each other, holding each other's hand, just like that Renaissance piece of art. Like they're like almost touching, whatever. And Nick finds Ziggy. Nick, her lover, finds Ziggy and gives her CPR. And we find out as they are giving her information to the EMT that her first name is Christine and her last name is Berman. And that makes her C. Berman. We go back to present day. Dina and Josh get the hand from the tree because they're telling Christine, they're like, we know where the body is. We know where she's buried. And the hanging tree is currently in the center of the Shady Side Mall, which is shady as fuck. And they plan to reunite it with the hand when Dina lays the hand with the rest of the bones, because they bring the bones to the mossy shit in the woods where the car crash was in the first movie. She gets this vision where she's transported back in time and someone calls her Seraphir. Like, she is Seraphir.
And we come to the last movie, which is most people's favorite.
1666. Fun fact about this movie, it uses all the same actors from the previous two movies. And it's not quite time travel, it's just Dina seeing Seraphir's story playing out in front of her. A bunch of the younger people in the village it's a, I guess, town of called Union. They're secretly telling each other about a party that they're planning to have in the woods that evening. And Sarah's obviously having a fling with the pastor's daughter named Hannah Miller. They go into the woods and they go to it's not really a house, but like more of like a
shack.
like a shack, a tent type thing that belongs to this widow. And they go with their friend Lizzie to get some fermented berries so that they can get inebriated of some sort while they're at the party.
I love that I wrote fucked up and you said inebriated.
um, this woman was supposedly a witch and she was supposedly exiled from Union because she fell in love with a Native American man, which is apparently pretty fucked up. This boner dude named Caleb tries to hit on Hannah and she keeps telling him no, and he's like, yeah, baby. And Sarah steps in and she makes fun of him for having a boner right in public. And she points it out to everybody. And he's pissed off about it. Sarah and Hannah go off into the woods and they have some sexy time. Except the bad news is somebody saw them and they weren't supposed to have sexy time because it's 1666 and lesbians don't exist yet, apparently. The following morning, there's a lot of fucky shit going on. The fierce pig ate her babies, which, yo, it's not that unusual because sometimes mamas eat babies, animal mamas eat babies, not so much human mamas.
Right.
Eat babies if they are new mothers or if they aren't doing well or if they died or something like that. But they also see that the crops are all spoiled, bread is molding, and then Sarah's dog, oh, what the hell was his name? Mary Boy.
Mary Boy. What a good dog name.
That's gonna be my next dog's name. Mary Boy, who she's been looking for all morning, they find him somewhere, but not before they're having problems with the town well because it has been poisoning the water supply. And the reason it's been poisoning the water supply is because Mary Boy was drowned in the well. There's this town madman or drunkard named Mad Thomas, and he says it's the devil's doing. I doubt it. And the pastor's acting fucking weird. And Sarah is like, hey, I need you to come over because daddy's acting weird. And he's been muttering to himself, and he's got these icky flies around him, which, ugh. And Hannah says, Hannah's like, look, girl, I appreciate you're here, but I can't see you anymore because my mom thinks that we're lovers, which we are, but she can't know that we're lovers or think that we're lovers. So Sarah leaves, but not before she gets caught by Hannah's mom.
She's a real ass and tosses her out on the street. She's like, everyone in town knows what you are, and God knows what you are, and she's just a real bitch about it.
There's this other guy hanging around town. His name is Solomon. His last name is. It's not bad.
Stop.
His last name is good.
Are you pleased with yourself?
And he's Nick Good's ancestor. And his wifey died and he became a widower and he moved outside of the settlement. And Sarah's dad wants her to marry him, but they're just friendsies. And she confides in Solomon about her being gay, and she worries that she brought on the curse, but he's like, nope, 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 not your fault. I can assure you that. When she returns to the town, Union, she sees the pastor has locked himself up in the church with all of the children. And these people are like, what is he doing with the children? And they're like, the men are like, we'll find out. Let's break down the motherfucking door. So they burst through the doors of the church. They find a pile of eyeballs in the middle of the floor. And the pastor's mumbling to himself at the altar. And I believe his eyeballs are gone too. And he took all the eyeballs of the children and scooped them out. And then all of a sudden, the townspeople burst in after the men do, and they see what the hell has happened, and they're all screaming witchcraft.
Something that's worth noting, when everyone floods in to see that their designated child has been killed by the pastor, Sarah comes in and sees her brother has been killed. And then the pastor like turns and quote unquote looks at her because he can't look at her because he doesn't have eyes. But he turns to her and he goes to like kill her or something. And Solomon saves her by stabbing him through the torso with a pitchfork. And that's when everyone's like, witchcraft.
I literally forgot about that part. So we cut to Caleb, the boner dude, and he's bitter and sad and pathetic. And he testifies that Hannah and Sarah bewitched him. All the men of the town are like, I guess it's so. They must be witches. We gotta hang them. And Hannah is captured and she's chained up. But Sarah has not been captured and she's still lurking around trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Now she can free them. And she goes to Hannah. She sneaks in to see Hannah. And they have a little chit chat. And Hannah's just like, go save yourself. So Sarah goes to find that little hut in the woods that belonged to the widow who they thought was a witch, but they find that she's dead. And the shit that they found in I was gonna say the shit that they found in her apartment, the shit that they found in her hut, the book about witchcraft and other occult things are gone. And so Sarah goes to Solomon and she tells him, and she's saying that somebody must have traded the town of Union in exchange for power or something. And Solomon hides Sarah while she's at his house, because the townspeople come looking for her. She hides in like his bedroom or something like that. And while she's hiding, she finds this little door which leads to a tunnel, and she finds the book, and she finds the witch's mark carved in the floor, and a goat head, and a bunch of blood, and all kinds of shit like that. He finds her down there after he's done sending the townspeople away. And she's like, hey man, what the fuck is this? And he's like, it's just like one person every couple of years. And it's a small price to pay considering that, I'm going to be powerful and it keeps the town safe or something.
It's
And
stupid. Sorry. It gets
and
me riled up.
and he's like, join me, and we can make a life together dealing with the occult. And she's like, I don't think so. And so she runs away into this tunnel bullshit, which seems to be the same tunnel from the second movie that who the fuck is Anna? Alice and Cindy are maneuvering their way through. And he chases her, and while he's chasing her, he cuts off her hand, which is how it ended up in the tunnels with all that mossy shit. And she keeps running away. And when she comes up out of the tunnels, she ends up in the church, which I believe was where the mess hall is. He comes up behind her and he's yelling at the people that he found the witch. Cuts to a new scene. She confesses to witchcraft, says that it was all her, Hannah's innocent, so that she can save Hannah from hanging. And she curses Solomon before she dies, telling him that just the truth will come out after she's hanged. So they move her body, and where they bury her, the moss, that red moss spreads. After that, we cut back to 1994. Dina fills in Josh and is like, hey, yeah, it's not Sarah Fear. It's Sheriff Good that we have to fear. Fear. Um, and they get back to Ziggy and they tell her to, and she's like, bitch, what the fuck? And she's like, I just called him and I thought he would be of good help. And they realize that they need to kill him so that his next of kin cannot continue with the sacrifices because those are bad. They recruit a custodian at the mall and this guy that Josh met at the police department who was, I don't know, a tweaker or something because they find him on the street. Is that the custodian? That's not the custodian.
Yeah, it is the custodian. He's not a tweaker.
Oh, why
He
was he?
was he was at the police station because Sheriff Good framed him for graffiti.
Oh, well, Sheriff Good's a dick.
Yeah, and Martin is the custodian. He's like Sheriff Good, more like Sheriff motherfucking evil. And he says that in the first movie. And that's, your first hint that, and he says, Sheriff Good says in the first movie that he's like, these are my cans. Like, I did this. So you already know that he's like a shitty guy from the beginning.
Okay, so they recruit Martin, who's the custodian, who's not a tweaker. And he's actually a pretty funny dude. And he has no clue what the fuck is going on. Um, and then they show him Sam being possessed, and he's like, "Oh shit, okay, I'll help. I still don't know what's going on, but I'll help." They basically do the same thing that they did in the high school, but they do it with Dina's blood because at some point, I believe Dina had bled on the moss or something.
I think so. Yeah. When she had her vision, I think she bled on the bones.
Yep, I think she got like a nosebleed or something.
And we know how they
Always
feel
about.
about being bled on. You don't bleed on the bones.
So they do that with Dina's blood at the mall. They fill these super soakers with blood juice and they, I believe, use it to trap the serial killers in the mall. Now it's an indoor mall, like most malls are, and they've got them like roll down grates.
I worked at a mall and I still don't know what they're called. They're the gates that you pull down when you're closing up shop
Because
and they lock.
most mall stores don't have doors.
Right. You know what we're talking about.
The jail bars.
Yeah.
I think they put some blood inside some of the stores to like lure some of the monsters into. And eventually the monsters start coming. Dina decides it's her time to shine, and she runs down in a tunnel system and she has a showdown with Nick Good. And she's like, oh, excuse me. He's like, we deserve our good things. Which, okay, yeah, you would if you weren't sacrificing people for those good things. Sam gets untied and tracks down Dina in the tunnel, and she starts fighting her, and they're just throwing fists. And then Nick starts fighting her during this fight scene, and Dina puts his hand on the gross squishy thing from the second movie that Alice touched and made her have all them nasty ass visions. And then he has a vision, which is ended by Dina stabbing him in the eyeball, which ends up killing him. And wait a second. We forgot to mention the part where they spray the serial killers
With the blood.
with the blood.
Um,
And they all start going after each other and ripping each other to pieces.
yeah.
Because they were like, it was a good part. I think they were going to do that to Nick and spray him. I think that was part of the original plan. They were going to spray Nick and have the serial killers go after him. Maybe.
They were gonna carry him. So like they were gonna dump a bucket of blood on him, Dina's blood. But then they ended up vetoing it. And I think he does get blood on him at some point,
But they
but
don't go after him because he gave them money.
he gets out of it somehow. I can't remember. He somehow gets I think he has like C. Berman in his hands, like he has her like in his like the crook of his elbow, and he has like a
Oh,
gun or
in a
something.
chokehold or something.
Yeah, and then she somehow gets away, and then all of them, he gets the blood on her, then they have blood on them, like our guys that we're rooting for. And so they go into a shop and lock themselves in. And Josh is like, well, my sister's still out there, like, I gotta do something.
They change
He
clothes.
Do they change clothes?
I don't know, but that seems like a logical idea.
It is a logical idea, but I don't think they brought extra clothes.
Well, they're in a
Yeah.
mall.
They weren't in a clothes shop though.
God damn it.
Towards the end of the fight that Dina is having with Nick Good, Josh is out there making his last stand, and C. Berman and Martin come out and they also decide to help. He's making his last stand against those killers because he doesn't want them to go after his sister. And right as they're about to get him, that's when Dina stabs Nick Good in the eye. And then they all poof.
They fade away. So Sam and Dina obviously stop fighting because Nick Good is dead. And they follow the tunnel and they exit through a fancy ass house, which can only be assumed to be Sheriff Goods. And Kyla wants me to tell you that his home decorating skills are through the fucking roof, but the roof is terrible.
I just don't understand like the surplus of goat heads and then the surplus of motivational posters. It's just a choice, and it's not a choice that I condone.
So Sunnyvale Luck runs out. As soon as they exit the house, somebody's hit by a fucking garbage truck. And then Nick Good is exposed as a serial killer on the news.
Towards the end of the movie, like, there's this little part where Josh, um, kind of
Oh, this was so
meets
big.
this girl where he had actually been chatting with her on AOL this entire time, but they like never knew who they really were. And she signs his cast because he broke his arm during all the bullshit. And she signs his cast and she puts her handle
Screen
on
name.
there. Yeah, her screen name. And it's the girl he's been chatting with this entire time. And his face is like, and it's really cute.
It is really cute.
And then,
Sarah and fuck, her name's not Sarah. Sam and
Dina.
Dina end up together, and Sam is just like, fuck you to her mom. Oh, and Dina and Josh's dad turns out not to be a deadbeat, kind of. And he leaves them a nice little sticky note on the door or whatever.
That's right. It's interesting you remember that. C. Berman goes to meet Nurse Lane at the end of the movie. She goes to meet up with Nurse Lane and talk about things.
Good.
I almost forgot about that part. But yeah, Dina and Sam go have their little date in the red witchy moss and listen to the pixies and eat burgers, and it's all very cute. And then the movie's over and the trilogy's over, and I guess they're planning on making more Fear Street movies, and as long as I don't read the books, I'm here for it.
With that, we've got some fun facts. And I also want to talk about some little parallels.
I will say some fun facts. I want to start with the horror movie homages in part one. Like I said, with the first kill with Heather, they pay homage to Scream, and they also pay homage to The Shining. In part one, when the Axeman is going off after them, they recreate the whole axe through the door scene, like shot for shot. Um, and The Shining is like one of my favorite horror movies. And then one of the coolest kills, Kate with the bread slicer, which I think I really like the technical aspects of like how they do the gore in movies. I think it's really cool how they do the effects, makeup, and everything. Kate with the bread slicer in the supermarket. Apparently that was inspired by a 1989 movie called The Intruder, which I haven't seen. But I really like that they paid all those respects to those different horror movies in that first movie because I think it's such a good entry level slasher movie. I feel like Kaya might agree with me since that was literally one of her first, if not her first horror movie ever.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it was really good. And then I want to mention this fact really quick because I'm the witchy one and I'm literally a professional tarot reader. In 1666, when Sarah Fear is buried, her legs are crossed in the same way as the figure in the Hanged Man tarot card. And that card's all about self-sacrifice, being okay with your self-sacrifice. Sarah allowed herself to be hanged, sacrificing herself to save Hannah. That's the quote from the IMDb page. I would like to amend. Sarah didn't allow herself to be hanged. I don't really think she had a choice, but she did sacrifice herself for Hannah. She did say, yes, I bewitched Hannah, and she didn't have any part in this. So, yeah, I thought that was really cool. Something I never would have noticed if I hadn't looked up the trivia.
And there's also a town in Ohio named Shadyside, but I believe there's absolutely no correlation.
No.
Now, parallels. So obviously we have the good name and the fear name. However, they're like completely flipped, where fear in the not a novel, in the books were the bad people, kind of. At least the originals were. And the goods were the ones that were being accused of witchcraft.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting. I think it's interesting that there's a character named Simon when Simon Fear was in the third book in the Betrayal series.
I don't think he's anything like Simon
No,
Fear.
I don't either, but I thought it was interesting. And then I think it's kind of interesting that would we consider what the goods are doing as witchcraft? Or would that be like making deals with the devil? Or
I mean,
what do you think?
in universe, like in the story, I think they are placing a curse on somebody in order to make them do the thing. And so it is the deal with the devil that gives them, okay, let me figure out how to explain this. The goods are the one placing the curses on the people to make them serial killers. Because they are placing the curses on the people to make them serial killers, they are the ones who get the credit for the blood spilled. The blood spilled is what is being given, quote unquote, to whoever they have the deal with, the devil or whoever it may be. I don't know. I'm I didn't write the movie. That's my theory.
We can assume that Sarah places a curse on the goods. I don't know if we would consider that a curse when she says, the truth will unfold or whatever, or if that's just, foretelling or just her assuming that eventually he's going to get caught.
I think it's the power of your last words. I don't think she's actually doing any kind of magic, especially not on purpose.
I think that's fair. So now what doesn't make sense to me is why when somebody bleeds on the bones.
I don't know. It's a whole separate thing from like, because like the names getting carved into the stone pillars to make them serial killers, that's one thing, right? And then the people bleeding on the bones, that's the other thing. And then
The
them
serial
bleeding,
killer is coming back to life
yeah,
when somebody bleeds on the bones.
and them bleeding on the bones, and then the serial killers wanting to kill the person who bleeds on the bones. That's one thing. But then them bleeding on the bones and then seeing the vision that Sarah's trying to tell them what's going on, I think that's like also a separate thing. So it's kind of,
Like four things that don't necessarily connect.
yeah, it's a little, I don't want to say messy because I love these movies, but
Right.
um, it's a little bit all over the place just because like I don't know where that ties in. Like, why is it that way?
Right. It doesn't necessarily make sense that the serial killers would come back to life.
It just doesn't. Sometimes I just was talking to Andrew about this today. Sometimes when you're watching a movie, you need to turn your brain off and not think about it critically. But at the same time, it's important to think about your favorite movies critically as well because
Right.
they're good art. However, not everyone's a movie critic. Like, it's okay for a movie not to be critically good as long as it's entertaining. I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, I would
And
agree.
I think these movies are very entertaining. Mostly the second two.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the first one, but it's definitely not my favorite. I don't know why I ever thought that. I think just because I thought it was such a good entry level horror movie, like if I ever met someone like you who never watched a horror movie before, I knew like I've never had a horror movie that I was like, I can definitely show this to them first thing. And like that's definitely the perfect movie for that.
Right.
Back to the whole idea of horror movie homages. The second movie had a lot of Friday the 13th vibes. And I just really think it's cool when like you can really tell that they loved making those movies. Am I a little sad that like it's not a concrete retelling of the books? Like maybe a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I um I bought the books specifically because I thought that movies were based on them. And I like did heavy research to find out which books the movies were based off of because there are so many Fear Street books. And it led me to the Betrayal series. None of these other ones, but it led me to the Betrayal series. Um, and I was kind of bummed when they did not match up.
I mean, the Fear Street saga, the betrayal is on there, and I will agree that the betrayal does track
Somewhat.
for the last one, kind of, as far as inspiration goes.
Agreed.
I can't speak to the how many others are there? Two, four, six other books that were on that list for the Pop Sugar article. I kind of want to read them, but like, if they're written anything like the Fear Street saga or the Betrayal series. I don't know. I mean, like, they did take up valuable time, and like, I could be reading other books.
I would suggest finding an in-depth summary.
Yeah, I could just read the Spark Notes. Because, like, I remember reading some of the synopses, and Dina's in it, but she doesn't have a brother named Josh. And another thing is that, like, Shady Side in the books that we read is in or near Massachusetts, I think, or West Virginia. And in the movie, Shady Side is in Ohio, and that's like the opposite of a parallel. What do you even call that?
A perpendicular.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we should just start using that. It's a perpendicular the book. So yeah, I don't know. That was the Fear Street trilogy. I love those movies. I think it's a great series.
I enjoyed them.
I think they were a good entrance for your horror endeavor into horror.
Yeah, I would agree.
I wonder what the next stepping stone is for you in terms of watching something more scary because like the thing is that was such a good entry level that like I don't know if there's like a good next level. It's either like it's here's Fear Street, it's the same, or it's like way up here in terms of intensity. Like I don't think there's an in between.
Oh no.
I don't know. I'll have to think about it and talk to Andrew about it. Why is ending this always so weird? Like weird.
So that's what we've got for today. You should give us money on Patreon
God, you're so brazen.
because currently I'm still the only patron.
Oh my God. If you become a patron, you get access to the video version of the podcast. You also get early access and
You can see Ziggy.
you get to see Ziggy and
He
also
was
my cats.
literally licking my face during this episode
Yes.
and making guest appearances in front of the camera.
If you pay $7 per month, you get bonus Patreon episodes that are exclusive. If you want to see something like that, you can see our Alabama White Thing episode that's up on our platform right now. What else do you get when you're I can't even remember.
I don't know, but don't feel obligated to pay $7 because I'm only paying $2 a month. That's not bad.
But if you can't be a patron, that's okay. Just make sure to follow us on all our social media. We are at Movie Witch Pod on Twitter and at Movie Witch Podcast on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
You can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and all of the podcast places. Please consider sharing with a friend because the best way to spread the word is literally word of mouth. Tell your friend that you like our podcast because of course you love it. And maybe they will like it too. And also leave a review if you feel so inclined. Because that also helps. Okay, well, I think that's it.
All right.
We didn't say hi, witches.
Fuck. Bye, witches.
Bye, witches.